Welcome back to the Minutemen Initiative. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a really cool episode today. So this is going to be kind of the first episode of a multi-part series that we're going to do occasionally, and we're going to be calling them the After Actions Review. So we're actually going to sit down with individuals and talk about their experiences and talk about things they've had to do in their lives that we can learn from. So today we're actually bringing in Zeke Johnston, who has had a very unique experience happen in his life and kind of a life-altering moment, and he had to work through that and deal with that. And today he talks about that whole story for us and shares it with us, breaks it down, and then we also talk a little bit about the aftermath. So we're really excited to have Zeke on the podcast today, and we really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for tuning back in. We've got Zeke Johnston back on the podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jacob. Good to be here with you guys.
Yeah. So we're going to start kind of a series. We're going to start calling them the After Actions Review, and we're just going to talk with people who've had unique experiences that they're willing to kind of talk about, life experiences or, situations where they've had to defend themselves or protect someone else or save someone, different things like that. And we've got a lot of different people that we'd love to hear their stories. And just so happens Mr. Zeke over here has quite the story himself. So we're just going to kind of start this and throw them in occasionally. I think there's a lot to be learned from other people's experiences. And it's pretty cool to hear, kind of the story, and then what happens after the fact, and depending on whatever it is. So, I guess with that, do you just want to kind of jump in and start talking about
Sure.
what yours is?
Yeah.
We'll just start to kind of break it down. And
okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. So, a number of years ago, I'm going to be a little bit vague on some of the points on this. So,
okay.
Some of the details don't really matter that much, and so I'm going to leave some of them out. But number of years ago, it was 2 weeks before my wife and I got married. So we were engaged. I think it was right about 2 weeks before. We had met up to go to a movie.
Okay.
And we had. My wife actually didn't even have a driver's license at that point. I married her young, and then I had the pleasure of helping her get her driver's license, which is kind of fun. I kind of robbed the cradle a little bit, but no, she was 19. I was actually 19 when I got mine too, but
I was over here like, do we need to define what the age actually was?
That's why I figured I better say it.
She had just turned 16.
She had just turned 16. No, she was 19. She was 19,
yeah.
and I was almost 26. I turned 26 5 days after getting married. So, little bit of an age span there gap, but. Actually, I think the story would be better starting the evening before, when I went out to her folks' house where she lived before we got married. So I go out the evening before. For years, I had carried a pistol for personal protection, and people would make comments sometimes. I usually carried concealed and stuff. Carried a little Derringer at one point. And
the old Derringer, huh?
The old Derringer, yeah. It was a little North American Arms 22 mag revolver, small thing. It was pretty comfortable in the hand. So I carried that for a while, and I believe personal protection was good. I'm trying to remember my mindset back then. If it was like protect other people around me, that's certainly my mindset now. Mm-hmm. It's like, personal protection for my family. But also protection for like innocent people in the community. Yeah. It's obviously hard to insert yourself into a situation you don't know anything about.
Right.
But, maybe active shooter situation or something. So, But anyway, I carried a a pistol. I actually was carrying a Springfield 9mm XDM, and I had Hornady Critical Defense hollow points. So they had a little rubber plug in the end, and they I think they still may make them. I don't remember, but basically the idea is that they'll penetrate clothing and they expand when they contact like tissue and body fluid.
Yep.
So
yeah, they definitely still make them. So
okay, yeah. I thought I had seen some not too long ago. It's been years since this whole thing happened. So anyway, I go out to my in-laws. At the time, my brother-in-law was just a little guy, like 6 or 7, and I had taken my pistol out of the waistband and put it up on top of the kitchen cabinet, because when I was roughhousing with him, I didn't want it coming out or whatever, right? So put it up on the kitchen cabinet, hang out for the evening. I think I left maybe around 11 that evening. I get out to my car, which is a little Honda Civic, little 4-door manual transmission Honda. I get out there and I hop in and I realize I left my pistol inside. I'm like, man, the way I run my mouth, like I'm going to go back in and I'm going to start talking and I'm not going to leave till 12:30, right? So I'm like, I'm just going to leave it. I've got other things to defend myself in the car. And so I took a Ruger SR22 and I put it in my waistband, little holster, leather holster I had made for it. I texted my fiance and I said, when you come into town tomorrow, could you please bring my pistol? It's on the cabinet over the refrigerator. She's like, yeah, I can do that. So fast forward to the next day, she met me and had like her 2 brothers and her 2 sisters with her. We were going to see Turbo the Snail when it first came out. And so we meet up and I get out of my car and they get out and I'm like, great, now we both have a gun. And she's like, huh? I'm like, oh, did you bring my pistol? She says, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. She was like, I was upstairs. And I was about to walk out of my room and I remembered that I needed it to grab it. And I walked down the stairs and forgot by the time I got to the bottom. It was like that quick. She forgot. Yeah. So this is actually pretty key to what happened because we go to the movie. She afterward hops in with me, her brother-in-law, like he's old enough to drive, not the one I was roughhousing with the night before, but
yeah.
And so he takes like the rest of the kids and heads home or whatever. My wife hops in with me and we had a couple stops to make. So we ultimate tan because we're going to go to the Bahamas, right? Mm-hmm. So we
get that pre-tan on.
Get the pre-tan on. It was a pre-burn. The gal at the front desk was like, sure, you want ultimate tan? You've never tanned before in your life? Good idea. It's like scorching you. So, we both come out of our booths and as the evening progressed, we're getting like more and more beet colored.
Yeah.
Like, man, why did she warn us? It was a pre-burn. We both burned really bad. So we ran to Ultimate Tan. Then we go to Walmart and we go into Walmart, do some shopping and stuff. And our goal was to head out to her parents' house like immediately afterward. So there's 2 entrances to Walmart, one that connects to the highway, one that connects with another road, and that also connects to the highway. So what's interesting too is there's a frontage road that connects both entrances to each other and skirts the parking lot, the Walmart parking lot. So we get in the car. I guess we sat there for a couple minutes. That's what we heard later when they watched the footage. Like we hopped in, sat there for a couple minutes. And we leave. And we leave the parking lot. And we're like, from what I remember, we're like a third of the way down, exiting the exit that connects to this other street and then to the highway. and come up behind us is a white, it was either a Chevy or a GMC. I think it was a Chevy, like a cab and a half, come up behind us, and it's, and they're honking, like, not like beep beep, like friendly, but like blaring their horn, like incessantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's either like get out of the way or something is wrong, you know? And I'm like, I turned to my fiance and I'm like, did I do something wrong? Did I roll that stop sign? Like I didn't know. Some people are kind of picky about that sort of thing, right? Like, oh, you cut them off, you know, whatever. She's like, no, I think we're good. But they were like honking so much, so incessantly. I'm like, okay, I got to see what's going on. So I stopped, and they stopped behind us. And out of the passenger seat, there's a gal driving. Out of the passenger seat, this guy jumps, and it's July, month of July, and it's middle of dip net season. It's very hot. My Civic, kind of a beater, sort of a beater, and the air conditioning didn't work, and I'd have this pigtail that somebody like hooked up for me so I could like ground it out or whatever, and it would make the fan run, right?
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, I had my windows rolled down about a third of the way. And so there was no like rolling windows down to communicate, right?
Right.
And this guy comes up to my wife's side of the car, and he's like very escalated. And he said something about driving too slow, and I'm like what? Like it's not making sense. Like I'm not on a road yet, right? I'm still on the entrance to the parking lot, and you're not typically driving very fast. So I'm like, what's going on? And he was like really, really worked out, like super agitated, saying I was driving too slow. I'm like, okay, well, you need to get away from her, is what I told him. Like, get away from my wife's side of the car, basically. Like, get away from her. And so he comes around to my side of the car, and using an expletive, he said I was like driving too slow. And I'm like, dude, like what? Like what's going on? What's your problem? I'm like still thoroughly confused. I've never seen this guy in my life.
Yeah.
I've never seen her. I can't even hardly see the gal who's driving. And he was so agitated, and I didn't cuss back at him. I don't. He reached through. In other words, I wasn't trying to escalate the situation. Right. I was confused and pretty perturbed, just by his road rage or whatever. He reaches through my window, he grabs me by the back of the neck, and he shook me. I'm like, whoa, like, man, this guy's nuts. He just laid hands on me. I haven't cussed at him.
Yeah.
I've like told him to get away from my fiance, away from her side of the car, and I'm asking him what's going on. Like, I still don't know. Evidently, I drive too slow on entrances to parking lots, right? Like, I'm serious. Like, this is how confusing it is for me.
So
I'm like,
weird.
It's very unreasonable. Yeah.
Right.
So when he like grabs me by the back of the neck and shakes me, because he is just like the rage is just coming in this guy. My wife says, she's like, Zeke, we got to leave. Like, we got to get out of here. Like, her sixth sense is pinging, right?
Yeah.
Like, she is not comfortable. And I threw my car in gear and pulled off of the entrance onto the side road that leads to the highway. And it's only 300 yards or 400 yards, whatever, to the highway. Well, he goes and jumps back in the passenger seat of the truck, and they pull out behind us. Naturally, they're heading to the highway too, right?
Yeah. Whatever,
big deal. And I told my wife, I'm like, okay, I'm calling this guy in. I said, he's either high or he's drunk. Like, he's on something, and it's, the next person he encounters, like, something bad is going to happen. Right. So, as you get to the highway, right before you get to the highway on the right-hand side, there's a car wash, and then there's an inn next to it. And then there's another street, and then there's Home Depot. So right behind this car wash, there's a little gravel lot. Just whatever. I don't know why it's there. So my wife couldn't see the plate numbers. I'm asking her, like, as I've called it in, what's going on? I'm like, can you see the plate numbers? She's like, no, they're too far back. So I pull into this dirt lot, this gravel lot, thinking they're going to keep going, right? They've got a place to go, people to see, right?
Yeah.
So one of two things happened in his mind. Either he thought it was an invitation to finish something, or it just was an invitation in his own mind, right? Like either he thought I wanted to deal with something with him. Like I have no idea what was going through his mind. So he pulls in behind me into the gravel lot and hops out again. And I'm thinking, there is nothing, like, I have no desire to be in contact with you, random person.
Yeah.
Like who is this guy? Like, I don't know him.
Yeah, you got nothing to prove. Like, there's
absolutely not. Nothing to prove to some random guy who thinks I'm driving too slow. So crazy. He pulls in behind us, jumps out again, and I didn't wait. I didn't communicate with him. I threw my car in gear again, and I pull, behind the inn, which is right next door, onto this side road, and I have dispatch on the line, and I'm like, this guy, I said, she's like, what's your emergency? And I'm like, I've got some random guy who's chasing me in a truck. I don't know him. I think I said I don't know him, or I've never seen him before. I think I don't remember all that I told her that had happened up to that point. Like, I don't know if I told her that, he laid hands on me or what, but I'm like, I don't know if this guy wants to beat me up. Like, I know nothing of what's, like, I don't know why this is happening. She's like, okay, well, she's like, sir, what location are you in? I'm like, well, I'm changing locations constantly. She's like, yeah, like, what city? Are you in Kenai? I said, yes. And the last thing I remember telling her is, I'm in the one end of Home Depot parking lot that they use as a used car lot every summer. She's like, okay, all right, got it. Well, at that point, I just felt like I needed to drive because they were following us like danger close.
So they were like on you guys, like chasing you around
on
like,
our
all
tail.
Over the place.
Yeah, like I've never had anybody that close behind me before,
dude.
And I was moving pretty quick, for like moving tight through tight places. I was moving fast, and they were right on our tail. And so I didn't hang up. I like set my phone down, or I dropped it. I don't know if I dropped it between the seats. I don't know if I set it down on my seat, like next to me. Anyway, I set it down or dropped it, and I drove, and it was recording this whole time, which was actually really, really important.
Yeah.
So, I guess they started sending law enforcement our way. I don't really know, but I'm driving like a maniac through this parking lot full of people because it's dip net season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for anyone that hasn't been in Kenai during dip net season, it's like our town is built for the population that's in it.
Yes.
And it's not built for what happens during dip net season, because not only do we have a ton of tourists that come up for the summer, but we have everyone from Anchorage, because Anchorage doesn't have good places to dip net.
Everywhere in Alaska.
Yeah, everyone in Alaska. But I'm just saying your biggest population of people is in Anchorage, and it's only a 2.5 hour drive down to us.
Yeah.
So they all come down to get, fish, which,
They say that the Kenai population can increase by tenfold.
Wow.
During because dip netting is also peak like red run as well.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So you have
context.
So that's like some context, just knowing like, okay, there's a ton of people out there. Like our road system and our parking lots are not made for what's going on.
That's right.
what Zeke's literally trying not to hit people probably at this point. So
yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying not to do. And everybody brings their dip net down on the top of their vehicle, and the handle's like 12 feet long or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how long it is. And then everybody is like missing a bolt or forgot to bring the nut and bolt, or it's rusted on. They tried to take it off. The handle breaks into two pieces, right? For transportation. And so everybody's showing up at Home Depot, whatever, right?
Yeah.
There's any number of reasons they're there cobbling together a PVC.
Yeah.
dip net. So, I mean, people are there.
And then summertime
Yeah.
at Home Depot in general is already busy because
Yeah.
that's, in the wintertime you can't build as easy. So like construction is like most
Seasonal.
booming in the summer.
Absolutely. So lots of people.
Yeah.
Lots of people there. And so I'm working my Civic like crazy, trying to lose these people behind me. My wife is praying out loud and like for God to protect us. And I look and I see, I realize like I'm being stupid. I was really focused. Adrenaline had dumped at that point. So I wasn't out of control, but I was driving like you shouldn't drive in a parking lot
Yeah.
in July in Alaska, right? With lots of people around. And I remember my tires squealing as I took a corner, like it took a turn. And then I see two cars and there's like 2 or 3 spaces in between them. And I look across and I see a lady like loading stuff in the back of her SUV. And like in the row over. And so I'm like, I guess I'm going to stop here and like face whatever's going to happen. Like I didn't feel like, some people afterwards said, why didn't you drive to the police station, which is, on the back side of Home Depot, right? Like a couple of streets over. Mm-hmm. Or, it's like, I talked to police afterward. They're like, yeah, we don't really hang out waiting for bad people to show up.
And that's another thing. Like that's like the, I heard it on one of the podcasts I was listening to. It's like the, if you get in a car wreck in the middle of nowhere, your best chance of survival is to stay at the crash site because more than likely they're going to find you.
Right.
And you had already given your location of like what general area
really
you're
point.
in. So it's like, why would you leave the area that you just told dispatch? This is the area I'm in.
Yeah.
Like in your head, you're thinking, okay, law enforcement should be responding. So it was actually kind of like it might have been an accident, but it's the smartest way to go. Like,
I'll take credit for it. No, I never thought of that though. That
you
makes
hear
a
about
lot
people
of sense.
wandering away from crash sites, and then those are the people that die because you
got to go look for them.
It's
right?
like, okay, there was like a big vehicle that had crashed, like a plane crash or something.
Yeah.
It's easier to find that plane than one single person that's just wandering in the wood line somewhere.
Thinking they're going in the right direction,
exactly.
which probably is not the right direction.
I mean, a little bit different analogy, but kind of the same concept.
Yeah,
like you told them where you're at.
Yeah.
It sounds like too that, I mean, you're describing like true fear. Like you and your now wife, where, I mean, she's like praying and you had just had a confrontation with this person that you don't know from Adam, and
there's no basis for it, right?
Yeah, and sounds like he violently, like, basically assaulted you in your vehicle.
He did. Yeah.
And so now you, at least I would think, I guess you would know what you were thinking in the moment, but yeah, I would be like, well, this guy, what are his limits at this point?
So that's exactly what I mentioned to people is, like family members. Think of family members who, like you may or may not know a lot of their intentions, but basically like most of your family members' intentions, and their ability with weapons. Those kinds of things. Their character, and what they're likely to do or not to do. Right? Some random strangers that you meet, you have no idea what their background is. You don't know. You don't know if they work at a daycare or if they've murdered someone.
Right.
Like you have no idea.
Yep.
So some random person who you've never seen before in your life, who has laid hands on you, and now they're chasing you, and they're being relentless about it, right? Like what is their intention? So I stop between these empty rows or empty parking spaces between these two parked cars across from the lady loading her SUV. And they were following so close and everything was so random. My wife and I both thought maybe they're going to ram our vehicle. Like that is like we talked about afterward. And I told her, like, man, I thought that was a real possibility. And she's like, yeah, me too. So thankfully they stopped behind us, and the guy jumps out of the passenger seat and comes running up to my side of the car. I would mention too, I talked to the investigating officer afterward, obviously. And he said that she had actually yelled at him, like the girlfriend had yelled at him, "Go get him, baby." So she's egging him on.
Yeah.
So they're a combo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he comes up to my side of the car. He grabs my door handle. He's trying to yank my door open. So at this point, none of this scenario made sense, right? Up to this point, nothing makes sense. Driving too slow, leaving a parking lot, someone I have no point of reference for knowing or interacting with at any point in my life. None of it makes sense, right? So I feel very, very threatened. I feel very cornered. I've been chased. And as he's trying to yank my door open, my life was threatened. I mean,
Yeah.
He's obviously a violent person. Yeah, he's laid hands on me once already. As we drove away the first time, he like smacks the back of our vehicle. That was the other thing he did. And so I have to protect my fiance, and I'm going to protect myself too.
Yeah.
And my life feels threatened. But I wasn't to the point in which I was willing yet to make like the ultimate defense move. Mm-hmm. And so I warned him. I pulled out my pistol, and in a high stress situation, everybody's a little bit different, but I think if you haven't been in a lot of super high stress situations, you might not have the squeaky adrenaline filled voice, but I did. And I pulled out my little SR-22 and I pointed it at him. And remember, I can communicate with him because my windows rolled down, both windows in the front, about a third of the way. And I yell at him. I was like, "Man, if you don't leave," I said, "I'm going to shoot you." I said, "I will shoot you and kill you if you don't leave." Like I told him at least twice that like very, very clear, and he can hear me. Remember, He's like 2 to 4 feet away from me, and he's like trying to rip my door open. Like he will have whatever his way is.
Yeah.
With us that he wants to, right? And when I pointed the pistol at him and yelled at him that I would shoot him and kill him if he didn't leave, he punched my window out.
Whoa.
So he and we saw it coming. Like obviously, like this whole thing happens in a matter of like a minute and a half, maybe. Like the entire thing it takes way longer to tell it, right?
Yeah.
So he reels back, and my wife and I both look away. That safety glass shatters.
Yeah.
If you hit it really hard. And he hammered it out like one blow. Boom. He punches it and it completely shatters. The window just completely dissipates. And my wife said before she had time to look back, she heard me shoot. And I shot him 3 times. At the time it happened, I didn't know if I had shot 2 times or 3 times, which is really, really interesting. Like, the other thing about like super high stress situations is I've found and through research, since then, you tend to snapshot and remember certain things very, very well, and other things you don't remember as well, or your mind shuts them out or whatever. But I just, I knew I shot at least twice. I had shot him 3 times, and he was wearing a shirt jack, like a plaid kind of insulated shirt. And I remember him like putting both hands on his chest, like holding himself. Mm-hmm. And he just looked super shocked. And next thing I remember, this is kind of where I snapshot. I remember him laying on his back, kind of like perpendicular to my vehicle, like up on the driver's side front of my vehicle on the ground, laying on his back. And then his girlfriend or whatever jumps out of the vehicle, and she starts screaming to bystanders that I shot him through my broken out window. So the lying started right away. It could have been a difference in perspective, but she, I mean,
so she was saying that the window didn't get broke out, but
she was saying I shot it out.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And I'm yelling back like, didn't you see what he just did? There's lots of people watching all this, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just a mess.
Oh man, that's crazy.
And so
lots of witnesses.
Lots of witnesses. This is all being recorded still on my phone.
Yeah.
All of this is. So she comes running over to him, and in one sense it's kind of sad, except that in life you should learn that there are consequences for your actions. You're a violent person and you work violence on other people. You don't expect a docile response from random people you don't know. You work violence, expect violence in return. I mean, this is kind of the moral of this story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, true account. So she's like pulling her hair and holding his face and just freaking out. And he says to her, I hear him say, everything's going to be okay. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
All right. And then she turned her attention to me, and she ends up running like back and forth, checking on him to me, and she's pummeling me through my open window. I'm still holding a loaded pistol. I had just shot her boyfriend or whatever for assaulting us. And she's like trying to hammer me through my broken out window. And
crazy.
And then she started telling my wife that she was going to get her. So I jumped out of my car. I'm still holding my gun, right? Jumped out of my car and I ran around. I remember asking out loud where the cops were. All this is, time kind of slows down. It all happens really fast, but it felt like, man, when are these guys going to show up and control this situation, right?
Yeah.
So I run around to my wife's side of the car, and because the gal said she was going to get her, and so woman starts pummeling me, trying to get to my wife, and I don't know, I was high on adrenaline. I was in pretty good shape and lifted lots of weights, and it didn't really hurt. You know? But anyway,
I think that's an important distinction, because in that moment, and maybe this is something you've thought about, and maybe it's not, but you didn't feel that your life was in jeopardy by her violence upon you, but her boyfriend or whatever he was.
Yeah. If she had used her vehicle as a weapon, certainly.
Right.
But she didn't, thankfully.
But the other guy obviously was very different,
Absolutely. And I just want to interject this. Here's when a person points a gun at you and tells you to leave, leave off your violence and go away, and you persist, and not only do you persist, but you escalate, escalate the violence, you have given that person no choice but to make them assume that you can overcome, or you have you basically have the ability, equal or greater ability than the person with the gun, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're kind of making that, whatever would stand in a court of law. I'm not necessarily talking about that, but I'm just saying from a human perspective, when you are warned and a gun is being pointed at you, and you persist in it, in fact, you escalate the violence, like you're communicating something very clear to that person.
Yeah.
Who is restraining themselves and saying, leave off and stop.
Yeah.
Like stop and leave. Right. So okay, so fast forward to where we were.
So you asked where the cops were.
I asked where the cops were. Yeah. And I'm still kind of getting beat on, whatever. And I remember seeing, I think it was probably Kenai and probably Soldotna and troopers. Stuff like this doesn't happen very often in our small community.
Yeah. So the cavalry was coming.
Yeah, they were for sure. And I remember hearing behind me, I saw like cops climbing out and leaning over their car doors and stuff with M4s or AR-15s and Glocks and everything, and kind of everything.
Yeah.
Pointing them in my direction. And then I heard behind me, a local, he's a Kenai cop, he's a state trooper now. Hirschberger.
Okay. Yeah, he's not in our area anymore, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, even as a trooper?
I think he's a trooper up in like maybe somewhere somewhere up north.
Up north,
somewhere in Alaska.
Okay. So he was behind me and he started giving me directions on putting my gun down and stuff. And I remember saying, telling him I would comply. I said, this is a little bit funny maybe to say this, but this is an honest story, right?
Yeah.
Honest account. So I'm like, I told him, I said, whatever you tell me to do, I said, I'll do. I was like, I said, I did nothing wrong here, whatever you say. And so just kind of trying to give the cops, local law enforcement, verbal submission, I guess, if you would, telling them I will comply.
Maybe even like reassurance.
Yeah, that is kind of what it was. It was like, you see what has happened here and it maybe doesn't look good, but
there's more to the story.
There's more to the story. Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to comply with your authority, right? Like submit to your authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember saying, I really don't want her to get this gun. Like talking about the girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
I knew I carried it. I suppose I could have cleared it and put it back in my holster or whatever, but I was keeping it secure, like close to my body, like holding on to it, because I knew if I set it down, I was sure, I was convinced that she would pick it up and shoot me with it.
Yeah.
At that point. And so, he told me to put the gun on the ground. I don't think I've ever reached that far in front of me. I think my arms grew a couple more inches as I was reaching. They say reach out, reach out in front of you and put your gun on the ground. And I asked him I told him I had another mag in this pocket, and could I put that on the ground too? They actually let me pull it out of my pocket, which was kind of interesting. I would think they would say like, nope, hands off.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then the whole on your knees, put your hands behind your head, and he emptied my pockets. One thing I really, really appreciated was the fact that when I complied with them, they were very respectful. I didn't get yanked around. I didn't get shoved around at all. I complied, and they were as respectful as they could be in a situation like that.
Right. Just doing their jobs.
Yeah, doing their jobs. Yeah, and maybe they don't deal with people who comply very often. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But so I appreciated that. Like that was something that really stood out to me. So they cuffed me. Hirschberger twisted the cuff several times. So when I sat there, it hurt, and when I moved, it hurt. Dug into my wrist.
Yeah.
And
in the front or in the back?
In the back.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, it's behind my back. Yeah, so it was like this behind.
They're bad about that nowadays. They cuff people in the front all the time, and I'm like,
do they really?
You guys are killing me.
Locally?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. We've talked to them about it. They're getting better about it now.
Oh yeah, no, it was totally behind my back. It was like, do you guys have a hole in the seat? Sit in the back of the car. Like, do you guys have a hole in the seat where I can have my hands in? Anyway, so I ended up, they put me in the back of the cop car. And so just imagine with me for a second, if you can, you're 26, you're getting married in 2 weeks, you just tanned, you're with your
sunburn
fiance. Just just sunburned, just burned.
I was going to say, that makes it even more uncomfortable in the back of that squad car.
Yeah.
You probably weren't thinking about that, though.
No, not really. And then like a minute and a half later, you're in the back of a cop car because you just shot somebody.
Yeah.
It's like your mind, like that transition your mind goes through is incredible. Mm-hmm. Not good incredible, not like I'm a hero. It's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like blows your mind. So the worst thing my worst run-ins with the law was, I think I had 2 speeding tickets.
Yeah.
Over the years. And I don't even know if they're on record anymore. Maybe they are, but whatever. So that was like my biggest run-ins with the law. So this was like way outside my ballpark. Like I'd never experienced anything like this before. And I'd try to make it pretty plain that I'm a God-fearing person, walk in the fear of God. I was sitting there in the back of the cop car, and the only thing I knew was to pray. And it was not profound. It was not real religious sounding. I said, God, you saw, I think I was praying out loud too. I was like, God, you saw what just happened. I said, what could I have done different? I was just, I was like, just shocked. Like the whole thing happened very fast, all of it violent, and just like, man, what could I have done different? It wasn't that I was feeling guilt and remorse. I didn't feel like there was anything I could have done different. My life was threatened. I certainly feared for my life and for the life of my fiance. Mm-hmm. And it was quite the moment. One thing that God gave me through my wife was I look out the front of the cop car, and she's standing next to a policeman, like close, because she's really nervous. And she actually like smiled and gave me a little wave, which I really needed, like to strengthen me. So
that's cool.
It was cool. She's awesome.
It's kind of a subtle, like, I'm still at your side kind of thing.
Yeah. Because at that point I'm thinking like, am I getting married in 2 weeks? And like, am I going to jail for years? Or,
dang,
like you just don't know at that point. It's out of your hands at that point. So, a little bit of the background of what happened that I found out later is, there's a surgeon who was on call, a local surgeon. I won't use his name because I don't have permission to, but he was at the soccer fields in Kenai watching his daughter play soccer for Boys and Girls Club or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so he gets the call, and he hops in his car, and he follows the ambulance to Soldotna. And so within like 20 minutes or half hour, I don't know what the time frame was from the point that I shot him to the point that he was on the table, but so he did emergency surgery on him. And this guy was very much under the influence.
Oh, really?
So from what I found out from local paramedics, because I know lots of people in this town.
Yeah.
A lot of paramedics, and they said that he was on meth.
Oh, okay.
So I talked to somebody recently who said, actually somebody that was like, man, that sounds like spice. I don't know if it was spice or not, but meth. I believe they were both under the influence. I don't know for sure about her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't say definitively,
right,
but I'm pretty sure she was too.
Meth's a big problem here, so it's very realistic that it could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So did he pass away, or did he end up surviving, or?
He didn't pass away.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I'll just mention like kind of how our part of the story continued just a little bit, and then I can give you the background on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, maybe I should just continue that part. So basically, he gets to the hospital, and a long time, like a family friend of my wife's, happens to be a nurse in surgery, and the doctor calls her over. I won't mention her name either, but he's like, "Do you want to see a beating heart?" She's like, "Sure." And the guy's all zipped open on the table. What's interesting too is obviously like they put him out, and he's on all kinds of, or he's whatever he's on, meth, like they still got to knock the guy out, right?
Right.
So I don't know how all that works with people being stable and safe when they're under, but they don't even let you eat food and drink water, or they let you drink water. They don't even let you eat food before you have a surgery, right? But anyway, so yeah, she, like here's his beating heart or whatever. Pretty crazy, but
yeah.
So he did emergency surgery, patched him up. So I'd shot him in the colon and the lung and the heart sac.
Wow.
So if I had shot him with a 9mm, which is what I carried every day.
Oh, that's right. So
So
going back to that, you had
going back to that
SR-22, right?
I had the 22.
Yeah.
And I never, it was rare that I ever carried that.
Wow.
I always carried the 9mm. So he may not know, but he was that close to just being dead on the spot, right?
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was carrying those critical defense hollow points.
Mm-hmm.
Those take lungs out, I've heard.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Lung blowers.
Yeah.
Especially those 115 grain FMJ.
Yeah. Anyways.
Hopefully everybody gets the reference.
Yeah.
But
just Google 9mm lungs Biden and
that's right.
You'll find it.
The lung blower.
Yeah.
So he patched him up. So basically the heart sac so I ended up meeting the surgeon because my dad is a custodian and he was working at the airport, at local airport in Kenai. He was cleaning it and he was whistling a hymn or something like that. The surgeon comes in to get his dad, who's just flown in. But before before the surgeon comes in, the dad gets off the airplane, comes in, hears my dad whistling the song. He's like, "Oh, is that such and such?" And they realize each other is, they love God and Christians and stuff. And so the surgeon comes in to pick up his dad. He's standing there talking to my dad. They introduce each other and the surgeon's like, "Your last name is Johnston? Is your son?"
Yeah.
"Is your son Zeke?" He's like, "There's kind of an odd connection here." So that's actually how I met the surgeon. So the surgeon told me later that, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So basically, even though the heart was not penetrated by one of the bullets, the sac was compromised, and basically it equalizes. I don't know, have its own pressure or whatever in the heart sac. I don't know how that works exactly, but
yeah, I'm not sure actually.
But basically he said something like the pressure equalizes in it, or the heart sac fills with blood and it constricts the heart and you die.
Okay.
He said that usually takes about half hour.
Wow.
Somewhere in there. So it was touch and go. In fact, he told me that at the time it was like a landmark surgery for his career. And this is a guy that has been to a city of 6 million people in a third world country, and he was one of 2 surgeons. He was donating his time.
Wow.
And so he saw everything in this city, right? He said it was landmark for his career because of the small caliber, the amount of damage that it did, and it was just super touch and go. So he also gave him a colostomy bag because I had shot him in the colon.
Okay.
So colostomy bag, and then he patched him up. So he was in a coma for a week. I'm guessing it was medically induced. So the surgery was done in Soldotna. They flew him to Anchorage. He was up there for a week. And then the surgeon told me later that before he released him, he told him, "God gave you another chance at your life, and you need to think about that." So you do some research on this individual, whose name I will not say. And he had a rap sheet, domestic violence. He wasn't driving because his license was revoked. There's a number of things. There are some extended family members in this area. Yeah. So, the So what happened on our end was I'm in the back of the cop car. We head to the police station. Sorry, this is a little out of order. Some
That's
of these
fine.
things
Just do your
that
thing.
come to mind. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. So he actually, the paramedics were yelling at the cops to get the gal off of them because she was hindering in her freaking out. She was hindering them from getting the guy into the back of the ambulance. And then once they got the guy in the back of the ambulance, he started kind of like fighting. I don't know if the word is fighting, but basically fighting the paramedics. Like it calmed him down just enough that they could get him in the back. And then he started really kind of giving them heck when they're trying to get him stabilized, I guess.
Interesting.
So very, very interesting. So anyway, so we get to the police station and we're questioned separately. Hirschberger takes my cuffs off. He's like, "You're not going to go anywhere if I take these off, right?" I'm like, "No." And then of course he told me I had the right to remain silent. Anything I say can and will be used against me in a court of law. And I said, like I'd heard that so many times before,
Yeah.
like just movies, it's everywhere, right?
Right.
I'm like, what exactly does that mean? He's like, well, if it can be used against you in a court of law, it will be. So that's supposed to make me want to talk? I mean, it's
supposed to make you not want to talk, really, if you take it serious enough. Yeah.
I guess I didn't take it serious enough, Jacob.
I didn't mean you. I mean in general.
I hear you. And this is where I think my situation is a little bit unique in some ways, is because I had no background in law enforcement, and I had no background in like criminal activity.
Right.
So I didn't know how the system worked. And so he tells me that, and I'm like, honestly, I didn't say this to him, but this is just kind of how my mind worked. It's like, all I know how to do is to tell the truth, to tell what happened.
Yeah.
Right? You actually see that with Kyle Rittenhouse recently. Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
He told his story. He told what happened. And I'm not saying that's always the best thing to do. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to get a lawyer. I'm not implying any of that. Everybody's situation is different, and there's real strong recommendations by people in the field on like what you do or don't do at that point. I'm just telling what I did, right? So I told him what happened. I told the officer what happened. And I remember him asking me if I was like former military. And I said, no, sir, I'm not. And he said, like, have you been in law enforcement in any way? I said, no. He said, like tactical training? No. I mean, I've shot guns. I've been around guns a lot, and I own guns and I've shot guns. Okay. Any martial arts? No. Like, why? And he's like, well, he's like, the reason I ask is because you did everything like by the book. Like you did everything like exactly how you're supposed to. He said so I thought maybe you had some prior training in the area of personal defense or something. That being said, I will say that I certainly have since then.
Yeah.
Definitely since then. I think if you're a law-abiding citizen and you're worth your salt as a man, it's important, to get good training to protect your family. That's my personal perspective on it.
It's valuable perspective because you've been on the other side of that.
Right. A situation that just doesn't happen to people, right?
Right.
Except it did. That's kind of how I look at it, right? Oh, it doesn't happen to most people. Yeah, but it happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, he said, well, you tried to avoid the situation, like you left twice, and then you called it in, before anything happened, really. Like before anything big went down, like you called it in, and then you warned him before you shot him. So he said, you did everything that you were supposed to do. And honestly, like, I look at it as the grace of God and him, God giving me what I needed to at that time, and my wife's prayers being answered, and those kinds of things, you know.
Yeah.
Like it was God giving me the strength that I needed to do to make it fairly clear cut, right? So 2.5 hours later, I thought for sure I was probably going to spend the night in jail at least, right? 2.5 hours later, my dad and one or two of my brothers showed up at the station.
Oh, so you were just at the local police station doing this, like in like a interrogation room kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah. They didn't break out the rubber hoses or anything for me. Anyway.
The waterboarding.
So yeah, my father-in-law showed up, and we all, law enforcement and all of us, congregated in the hall, and I couldn't believe my ears. One of them said, all right, well, you guys want to go home tonight? I'm like, go home tonight? And they said, yeah. Well, they said, the final say is not with us. The district attorney makes that decision. But they said, like we're not afraid to arrest you. Like, we do this for a living. But they said, from what we know, from what you've told us, like, our stories matched well. Like, that's really, really critical.
Yeah.
As you guys know, that stories are not far-fetched and different from one another. That's why they immediately separated my wife and I.
Yeah.
Drove us separately, questioned us separately. So that there was really no time to fabricate a story. Like, there really wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, basically they said, from what we see, like, the final decision is not with us, but you did the right thing. So they said, we'll be in touch with you. It was interesting comments in the newspaper afterward. People were like, he shouldn't have shot a gun within city limits, and it was over a drug deal gone bad, or over a girl, and just different things. Everybody speculating, you know.
Just weird rumors.
All the stupid gets out. Yeah, everybody.
I remember that weirdly though.
Do you really?
Yeah, because well, you didn't say what year it was, but I think I was out of the military. But
we were.
No, I wasn't quite yet.
Well, I remember it happening. And
do you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't. I might have actually been down here. Yeah. No, I probably was here.
Okay.
When it happened, I was either here. I mean, I was stationed in Alaska, so
I might have been here on leave or something, because I remember it. It
was like, I mean, it was like the talk of the town for a little bit.
Yeah,
it doesn't really happen very often.
Yeah, small town.
We were all in the self-defense community, so everyone's like, oh, a guy used to, you know, but everything I heard was pretty accurate. Like, not to your story specifically, because
sure,
I remember when I met you and you were like, yeah, I did this, you know, I shot someone in self-defense at the Home Depot parking lot. I remember I was like, that was you?
Oh, yeah.
You were like, yep. But yeah, because I mean, it was like people talked about it. They're like, yeah, some guy was crazy in the parking lot, and then he ended up getting shot by a guy defending himself. So everything I heard was pretty positive.
That's good. I actually kind of disappeared for a while off of social media, so I let him go search my car. Mm-hmm. It was kind of funny because I had in the back seat, I was a little nervous. Once again, I had no experience with law enforcement, really. And they're like, can we search your car? I'm like, because obviously they can get a warrant, but it's way easier if you're just like, sure, go ahead, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I've got a bunch of guns in there. They're like, man, we live in Alaska. We don't care if you have guns in your car. Like,
as long as they're not illegal.
Yeah, I mean, nothing was illegal.
So you got like serial numbers scratched.
So you had other guns like in the back or something?
I had an AK Vepr. I had a 12 gauge shotgun. I had an AR-15. I had a 44 mag, and probably most of them were loaded.
Yeah.
And I went to the one in my waistband. So that's one thing I like to mention to people. It's like, maybe you will have the presence of mind to go for something else. Maybe. But you may grab what is closest.
Let's say what's most convenient,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So,
That's a good point. Yeah. There's a lot of people focus on like truck guns and stuff like that. Like,
truck guns, and even I see it in the medical community too. Like, you got medical kits in your vehicle, but can you get to them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get pinned in the front seat of your vehicle.
I know. Yeah, and people have keep a gun, and they're like, "Oh, I keep one in my car." Like, okay, all right. What good does it do you when you're in the store?
Yeah.
Like, my situation is just one of many. It happened to be that I was sitting in my car.
Yeah.
Like, do you train shooting from your car sideways? Like really, you think about that. It's like you kind of want to train from all different scenarios, and it's good that you keep one in your car, but it doesn't do you any good.
Right.
If you were to be in an active shooter situation in your church or in the store or at a school, it doesn't really do you any good unless you hear it happening and you're at your vehicle. I mean, if you're able to respond, good. But my point is, my wife and I have this little mantra ever since then. Then I say, everything happens in, she says, seconds, not minutes. Things don't happen in minutes. I mean, they do, but the point is that you can go from 0 to 60 in seconds, and you're either ready or you're not, right? So that's why I think personal carry is so important. I think it's very important. So,
can you recall, and maybe it's one of those snapshot things that you didn't quite grab, but when you actually deployed the firearm and made the decision to shoot, do you remember do you remember aiming or anything like that, or is that all pretty fuzzy?
It is pretty fuzzy. I know I center massed him.
Yeah.
My wife said it was a bad group, and I was kind of butthurt when she said she was teasing me. So this is after
not to be morbid, but that's good. They say to spread the trauma. So
yeah,
that's good. That's a good group at self-defense.
I don't want to make her sound like she's unfeeling, uncaring. She is. I will just say she's had to deal with a lot over the years, and it's been better. And she and I both process things differently.
Right.
So I don't really bottle things up, and I just kind of shed the skin, if you would.
Yeah.
And that was helpful for me. But yeah, anyway, I'll leave my wife out of it. But I mean, okay, now I got to say more. She's not a mental wreck, and none of that.
Right.
She's a very what's the word? Like, very well-adjusted person, right? But what it does, I will say this, what it does, a situation like that, and you guys have been in situations that have popped the bubble for you, right? But it like pops your bubble of nice, happy, safe reality, right?
Yes.
Like, there are some situations that you encounter in life, whether in the military or otherwise, whether deployed or whatever, or otherwise, in which it's like, you better hang on because you're going for a ride, and you're making the best of the situation, right? And so it kind of ruined our prince and princess view of the world, if you would. Yeah. It's like, evil's out there. There's violent people that will do things to people they don't know, but it definitely doesn't come knocking at your door, right? So, well, it popped our bubble, and
life altering,
life altering, yeah, and it's good. It's a good thing because it's reality. It is what happens in this fallen world. That sort of thing happens. So, yeah.
So, do you remember if you was it one-handed shooting, or was it kind of did you grip up, or do you not really remember?
Well, you almost have to break your grip if you're sideways, right?
Yeah.
Break or twist in one hand, right? And I think I probably two-handed it. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you just kind of held it crossbody.
Oh, no. I believe I actually I remember pointing. It may have been more like, there is body.
Yeah, well, it
at
sounds
the
like
end of my gun, right? Like,
right.
He's close. He's within, like I say, 2 to 4 feet. he's somewhere in that range, probably 3 or 4 feet.
Were you carrying like 430 at the time, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're a right-handed shooter, so
Yeah.
that's beneficial.
Yeah.
That's what I've always wondered. Like being lefty, man, it's tough shooting out my
Yeah.
driver's side window.
Oh, yeah.
I have to like really
Yeah.
position myself.
Um,
I mean, I've worked on it too. Like I've shot out of vehicles and stuff like
Okay.
that. But
yeah.
like old junkers at ranges and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you just have to kind of position yourself a little differently than a right-handed shooter would. But
that would be awkward.
in reference, I can shoot out my passenger window a whole lot easier. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah. And I'd have to, like, if anybody's in the passenger seat, they'd have to move their face.
Yeah, or you got.
And they might catch some hot brass in the eye. All right.
So they separated you guys. I had a question about, so when you before the police got there, you said she was going after she kind of started trying to get at your fiance.
Yeah,
So
she said she was going to.
Did you get out of? You said you got out of the vehicle.
I got out of the vehicle.
And you were kind of like safely.
Holding it close to
holding the
my
gun.
body. Yeah.
Did you kind of like just get out on your side? Like, what did you do during that time you were out?
I got out and I basically blocked her from getting. I mean, obviously she could have crawled in through my driver's side over all the glass.
Yeah.
Maybe that kept her from it. I don't know, but she could have tried to get at my wife through the driver's side. But basically, I got out, ran around the back of the car, and was blocking her from getting to my wife.
Okay.
And she just,
gave
she
up.
beat on me.
Yeah.
I stood there and kind of tried to block it, and she beat on me.
I gotta feel like that was probably like the most, at least for me, like I've been in situations not like that necessarily. That's way more crazy than anything I've been in, honestly. But
Okay.
like I feel like just putting myself in your shoes, I feel like that would have been the most uncomfortable part is afterwards.
Oh.
Like waiting for the police to show up, because there were so many people there.
Yeah.
I imagine in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And everyone's carrying in Alaska. Well, not everyone, but there's a lot of people carrying in Alaska.
I didn't think much about it, to be honest, at the time.
Oh,
like,
man. I would have been worried. I would have been like, dude,
Maybe
I'm going
I'd be
to get
worried.
shot by some random person.
Maybe
right
I'd be
now.
worried now. There's a guy that I think he's a customer of my brother's. You know who you are. He said, he was like, yeah, I was waiting. Like, if that guy with the gun tried to get away, I was going to stop him. And my brother's like, he was the good guy, like, or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to play the old, good guy, bad guy.
Right.
But it was like, no, actually, he had a reason.
Oh, was he there
like-
then? That guy was there?
Yeah. In the
He
parking
didn't know
lot.
you at the time?
No. I
Okay.
still don't know who it is. That's why I said, you know who you are.
Oh, okay. Good. I mean,
So-
yeah, this is kind of weird because it goes to show. We talk about that in active shooter situations, like, and it happens, unfortunately, where the good guy ends up getting killed because they stepped up and they actually took matters in their hands, and then the police aren't sure, or some, other person's not sure. We actually do a scenario close to that with our, church training that we do.
Okay.
Where you have an active shooter get shot by a random person that, you don't normally see in the church, and see what their team does.
Oh.
And it's like a lot of people, like we've had churches just gun down that guy, and he was just a perfectly good person. That's his first time at church.
Oh, no.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
And it's intentionally
Oh,
confusing. And it's
no.
there's actually a lot of recorded situations where that's happened,
Wow.
You think about it, like
But-
if one of us three decide to attend a church that we've never been to, whether we're out of state or we're switching churches or whatever it may be, and some guy comes in an active shooter situation, you smoke him before he can actually get anyone, really, or he gets some shots off, and then you got people inside the church that are like, don't know who shot where. They think, oh, well, he's the one that was doing all the shooting.
You're the last person they saw shooting,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
I'm going to pay attention now more.
I mean, it's,
well, I think too,
and I'm not encouraging people not to
No.
stand up and shoot, but it's just a very real thing, like to be.
well, it sounds like you presented, just hearing your story. I feel like if I was there, it'd be very clear that you were a non-threat. Like, it would be clear that, yes, well, this guy's got a gun. Yes, somebody got shot.
But I'm not continuing to shoot.
You're not, you're trying to, like, you're just being, like, punched by this person, and you're just kind of, like, trying to avoid everything. And
if you happen to be there, Jacob, what do you think you would have done? Like, you don't know Zeke.
I would have definitely deployed my firearm, but I would have, my target identification, it's hard because...
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to put myself in...
I've got a lot of training over the years. Well, I guess if it was me at that time there, I would have deployed my firearm and probably confronted you. But from how you've described it, and I can sit here and armchair quarterback it all day, but I don't think I would have felt like I had to shoot you.
No, I don't think so either.
You would have probably complied.
So remember, I shot from in the vehicle.
Yeah.
People hear it. They see a guy laying there.
So if I had seen all of that, like if I had been witness to all of that, I probably would have, come over to your aid more than anything.
Seeing what's going on, right?
I was more thinking like if I had...
That's where I went
shots,
too.
Heard shots.
Because that's more realistically, I think, what would have happened. Like, bang, 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 and then like glance over, like, oh crap, like, honey, stay in the car, or call the police or whatever. And then I probably would have deployed my firearm and kind of confronted the situation. But yeah, it's tough. And then, or maybe, honestly, it depends. See, now, if it happened now, I would have been... And there's a lot of variables. Like if my kids were in the car, no offense, everybody, but I would have bailed out of there. I probably would have pieced out of there. But
you also don't know.
If I'm on my own, I would have absolutely intervened.
Yeah. You also don't know what the situation. I mean, knowing what the situation is, and no one does, but the two people or whatever, or the 1-on-3 or 1-on-1 or whatever the situation, 2-on-5, whatever the situation is.
Yeah,
like there are lots of drugs here. I mean, straight up, there's lots of drugs here.
You got to use your eyes and your mind.
Yeah.
Like
the OODA loop. Like you have to assess what's going on. Like, a person with a gun doesn't mean that they're bad. The fact that they shot somebody just then doesn't mean that they're bad. It's like, and if you had told me to put my gun down or something, I probably would have told you the same thing I told the cops, which like, no, man, she's going to get it from me. Like she's going to shoot me with it. Right. Like, so there's, and not that you would have just shot me. Right. That's not, I'm not implying that. I'm just saying like, there's so many variables.
That'd be messed up. You've made your choice.
Oh man.
No, I agree. And it's tough. And
well, I'm just saying, like, from an audience perspective, like, I just want people to, like, to think, because I mean, you're right, you don't know until the only people that know are the people that are involved in the current situation, unless you got to witness the whole thing happen. Obviously, if you got to witness the whole thing happen, it would be more like, I agree with you, Jacob. I would be like, this guy was clearly in the right. He just got his window punched out. And he defended himself.
I think there were a number of witnesses that watched it, right? Like tires squealing, vehicles driving super fast. It's like, what are these stupid kids doing? Like, how many times have we done that, right? Like, oh man, slow down, you idiot. And then
and all of a sudden gunshots are getting shot out.
Confrontation, yelling back and forth, window punched out, and then you hear shots. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know what happened. Maybe that guy shouldn't have punched his or whatever, Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I think watching the whole thing unfold from like when you guys stopped, and I definitely would have been like, whoa, this guy was crazy,
Yeah.
But no, that's so you ended up kind of getting back into your story. So you were defending your wife, fiance at the time, but and then the police get there probably pretty quick. It probably felt like a long time, but I'm sure it was
pretty quick.
So they're probably, how long do you think how much time do you think went by of you kind of having to defend these blows from this woman? And
maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe.
So that they all get long. There, and then they give you they like come out guns pointed and start giving you your instructions.
I'm waiting for a bullet.
Did they they instruct her to like move away once you told her that you were worried about?
I don't know. I don't remember. I can still remember like concern, like she's not going to move. I don't know if she was just, I don't remember if she was just up in everybody's business all over the place. You know what I mean? Like paramedics, cops getting in his way, or as they're trying to load him up.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
You know if the shots were through and through on him, or were they like?
I don't think so.
Just everything was,
contained. Yeah, I believe so.
Just
like no
entrance wounds,
Yeah,
or-
I think just entrance.
Cool.
And
I don't know why that matters. I was just curious.
yeah, yeah. He was a little bit stocky at the time. He at least looked kind of stocky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was he like when you pulled in, were you facing Home Depot or facing the highway?
Facing the highway.
Okay.
Yeah. What's interesting too is I was asked to come in. So the cops asked for my phone too. And I let them take it and look through it, because I really didn't have anything to hide.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't a smartphone. It was a kind of a stupid phone. This was a number of years ago.
Right.
Almost a decade. But basically, I was asked to come in by the investigating officer a few days later. And so I went in and talked to him. A few days. It must have been a week or a week and a half later, because he had been up to Anchorage. So the guy went into surgery. They patched him up, flew him to Providence, and he was in a coma for a week, right? Investigating officer goes up there. The individual is, to talk to him, right? The guy's awake. He has a lawyer. He has maybe some family. He has friends with him. And I've heard this about people who are users. He was really freaked out about the whole situation, which is good because I did not enjoy it myself, right?
Yeah.
So he told the investigating officer that I was out to murder him.
Huh.
And the story, I think the girlfriend was there, and they said their story. The investigating officer told me that their stories kept changing, and that they said that it had started in Soldotna or between Soldotna and Kenai. I think it was between Soldotna and Kenai, and that we had an FU road rage match, that led to Kenai.
Random fabrication.
Yeah, it was a random fabrication. And he said their story, they couldn't get their story straight because it was made up.
Yeah.
It was made up. And so it was kind of they tried to do the old group absolution trick where you don't completely reject any of, the blame, right? Or it's not that you don't take any of the blame yourself, but you're passing it off on other people too. So it was it was us and them and whatever. So it was they were trying to make it sound like it was our fault too.
Yeah.
That this had gone down, even though neither one of us had ever seen him before. I've been to Wasilla maybe twice, which is kind of up in that area where the individual's from. It was not from this area. That was the other thing too.
Oh, okay.
Not a local person, but would spend time down here, working and stuff.
Because so it sounds like too that you had a lot of evidence on your side. You had I'm guessing CCTV footage from Walmart.
Yeah, they had to try hard to get that. Walmart didn't want to give it to them for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, it was just weird.
Huh. So they got that, and then the 911 dispatch call that kept recording.
Kept rolling, yeah.
Which that's just in general, that's a good tip to always stay connected with 911 if something like that's going on.
It's huge. So if you were the instigator, you probably don't want to roll your phone. but if you were if you're in the right, absolutely call even if you don't answer questions.
Yeah.
You can roll it. I think it's a great thing, even though I didn't do it intentionally.
Yeah.
I don't think I did. I don't think she said, stay on the line. Maybe she did. I don't remember. One of those things I don't remember.
Right.
But basically getting back to him being talked to in the hospital, the investigating officer said that he claimed that I had tried to murder him. And, the officer said, I told him, he's like, you need to stop talking and tell your friends about this. Like, you're blowing this way out of proportion. He said, if that guy wanted to murder you, like if his intent was to murder you, he would have, like, he had way better weapons in the vehicle to do it with than what he used. And he said he would have taken you somewhere else to do it, not done it in the middle of town.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of a parking lot. So, I mean, it's just dumb.
Just so dumb.
Yeah.
Because you could have just walked up and shot him in the head, once he
absolutely.
was laying on the ground.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. There was, obviously, it was not my intent.
No.
At all. Yeah. It would have been easy, or I would have emptied my mag.
Yeah.
And changed mags, right? So, anyway.
That just sounds so silly.
Yeah.
At least he was, alive to be able to make those claims.
Yeah.
It's kind of...
That made it easier.
You got a second chance, like you said.
It was interesting because the following weeks, leading up to our wedding was pretty stressful, both for my wife and I. And the police officers were good to work with. Like, they, of course, took my gun.
Yeah.
I want to be careful in what I say here. Let me just start by saying I really don't have hard feelings towards this individual. It's kind of hard to hate somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
As a follower of Jesus, bitterness is a very bad thing, right?
Yep.
I don't know him. I don't know his family. I don't know what his family is like. I do know, was it a stepdad or an uncle? Ran into a guy I worked with on the slope in a bar, and the guy said something like, oh, well, he had that coming, or something like that.
Huh.
So I don't know. I looked up his background and Facebook page and stuff afterward, and I'll say it was colorful. And so I'm not here to say anything about his family. All I know is my experience with him. But like, he has some family, maybe extended family, I would say, in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And then up north as well. So I will say I was very nervous afterward. They don't know you, you don't know them.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's possibly coming for you.
Right.
Right. So law enforcement said, well, if you have another firearm other than this one, like, you obviously know how to defend yourself. So, because I'm like, what do I do? Like, I'm nervous. I'm like, well, you know how to defend yourself, obviously. So that's good. So I appreciated the support there, and I just really laid low. I didn't get on social media. Didn't have a phone for a few days.
Yeah.
I was super stressed psychologically. It was very hard for me to deal with. I thought about it. I guess this is more kind of the after action report stuff, right? Like, well, I guess all of this is after action report, but like, maybe you'd say kind of the fallout from some of this. It took me probably 2 years before I was not thinking about it every day.
Mm.
So, I'm a pretty loving person who likes people in general, right? Like, that's kind of my personality. I like people. I like my business because I get to interact with people. So kind of being put through a situation like that was very unpleasant for me. I've always had kind of a pretty strong sense of justice. Like I always have hated it when I see bigger, stronger people picking on little people, like just in general in life. It's always just irritated me. It's like, stop picking on the weak. I'm not saying I was weak and he wasn't. My point is just like, I love people. I can't stand bullies. I've never been able to just, like, it just always drives me up the wall. That being said, it affected me pretty deeply for a long time. And I remember telling my wife 2 years later, I was like, I just realized I don't think, like, this doesn't come to mind every day for me anymore. So that was nice. It was nice to get to that point.
Did you do any like therapy or anything like that? Did they like, or did you just kind of rely on, just your beliefs, Christian beliefs and stuff like that to get through it?
Yeah, that was it's kind of weird. My family isn't the type like that would really ever go to counseling or that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they're against it. We might think it's kind of stupid, honestly. I'm not saying I personally don't think it is.
Our family is very much like that too.
Okay.
So we kind of come from that.
Like,
as well.
why would I do that? Like,
and again, not same thing. It's not that we don't think it works. It's just that that's, I don't know.
It's just not us, really.
Yeah.
I did go kind of do a debrief with my wife's pastor. We both went.
Okay.
And so, kind of. I mean,
good to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were people interested in it because it had just happened. So I, when I would tell people what had happened, it kind of helped me.
Yeah.
Be able to process it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very life-changing. I don't really view life in the world the same way. It didn't make me dark. It didn't make me feel dark. I guess it just kind of shows you the reality, like I mentioned earlier, the reality of evil in the world, and it does not necessarily discriminate.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
do you want to talk at all about like, because you've mentioned it in the past, in our past conversations, and I think actually you did a live on your company's page during the whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing, and you kind of empathized with him, and you said, having experienced this myself, like, I think it was right after everyone was saying that, kind of making fun of him for getting emotional on the stand.
Cried on the stand,
and people also saying, oh, he's fake, and stuff like that, and
fake tears, all that.
And you kind of came out and said, well, having experienced similar things, this is not something to kind of, you don't know, basically. Do you want to talk at all about like the psychological impact?
Yeah, I would really like to. So I think there's a couple different types of people. There's kind of like, I don't want to say the world is made up of two types of people. That's kind of overgeneralizing things, but there's a guy that I encountered.
Male and female?
Yeah. Well, there is only male and female.
Are you sure?
I'm absolutely positive. I would know.
Now we're going to have a little. Now we're going to have a little warning. This podcast may have misinformation in it.
What you added? I don't know why I would know, but
well, I mean, I just sound like I have some inside information. I don't, but
the same that everyone else has.
Yeah, same as everyone else. Yeah, there's only two genders.
Yep.
Yeah. So they, like two types of people. There's the people like the individual I encountered, and the individuals Kyle Rittenhouse encountered. And I'm kind of lumping them together in the same sort of category. Mm-hmm. And then there's people, I don't know Kyle Rittenhouse. I listen to a podcast that he comes on to kind of infrequently. And he tells the host like kind of what he's been up to. He's getting his pilot's license and doing this and doing that. And I don't know that I would say we had similar backgrounds, because I don't think we really did. I grew up in tiny Alaska on a farm, and flew to the hospital in a bush plane, born 20 minutes later, and flew back the same day. That's kind of how I came into the world. I don't think he probably did, but But I mean, we're similar enough that I think we're both the type of guys that we like to protect and help. It's kind of part of our nature.
Yeah.
What got largely ignored early on with the whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing was that he was actually administering medical aid to both sides. Like he was just offering it to anybody.
Yeah.
From what I understand, right? And I wasn't administering medical aid, but I was blindsided by it. I was not looking for it. People said, "Oh, Kyle's in the wrong place at the wrong time." All right. Yeah, we sent 17-year-olds off to war too, and he was 17 and when his situation happened, and no, he shouldn't have been there. Well, he had family in the area, he like, all right, whatever, there's a lot of different opinions on that. So, we get to the point in which he's on the stand and he cries. He's telling his story and he cries, and the media in this country is they're just disgusting. They're despicable. Thankfully they're being shown for who they actually are these days, that they're completely untrustworthy. And, you look at what they're doing to Elon Musk, who, had them in his back pocket until he realized the country was, not going to heaven, but going to the other place in a handbasket. And he's like, man, I better do something about this. Right. And now the media just excoriates him. So they did the same thing to Kyle Rittenhouse, because he's just a pawn, and they can use him to promote their narrative. So he's on the stand. He's 17. He's 17 years old. I was like 26, right? Not that I had a vast amount of life experience more than him, but I mean, I'd worked on the slope and commercial fished and done construction. And I mean, I'd been to another country. I'd gone overseas and been around quite a bit, probably more than Kyle. So, I mean, I was a more mature person, and I'll just put it this way, if it's not in your nature to be a violent person, but you end up having to do it, your hand is forced, you're cornered. They say don't mess with don't corner an animal, or cornered animal, strikes or fights back.
Yeah.
Like if that's the type of person that you are, it is very, very difficult to deal with it after psychologically, at least for a while. Kyle ended up getting a dog to kind of help him. I think that was kind of the idea behind it. But my experience, so we leave the police station. Oh, anyway, sorry, this is all convoluted, kind of being confusing here, but basically Kyle cries in the stand. They're like, oh, those are just tears trying to move the jury in his favor and all this stuff. And they're making fun of him and saying just unrepeatable stuff about, in relation to crying and what's going to happen to him in prison and all this stuff. They're just disgusting people.
Yeah.
And so I leave the police station. My dad drives me back to get my car that same evening, and I got to use the bathroom. I drive over to Safeway, and I go in, and of course, probably all of Safeway knows what just happened next door, but they have no idea that it was me. I walk in to use the bathroom, and I'm just like, everybody's probably watching me. It just felt really, really weird.
Yeah.
Felt like everybody knew, even though nobody had a clue, right?
Right.
Walk in, use the bathroom. I get home and staying with my folks at that point, up to the point in which we got married. And I told my mom, and moms kind of fix everything, right? Like you got a good mom, she can pretty much fix everything, right? I just remember telling my mom, like, Mom, I said, I had to shoot somebody. And she had heard about it, but it's like first time seeing my mom, right? Like the evening that happened. And she said, Zeke, I am so sorry. I am just so sorry that happened. I'm like, wow, that's all she can say. Like, she can do nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is my induction into the world or whatever, it was just a very surreal thing. And I ended up going to bed that night, and I just bawled my eyes out, kind of opened the relief valve, I guess, and just had a really good cry and then laid there wide awake on an adrenaline high. Like, okay, great. Now I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that I was sad, but it was just like psychologically, it pushes you pretty far.
Yeah.
And further than you have been before, right? So since then, I've like I mentioned earlier, I've done some pretty good, gotten some pretty good tactical training, so that I'm better prepared than ever before, than I was before, for sure. The other thing is I started studying some of the psychology of people that have been through my situation. 2 books that I really recommend. The titles are a little, well, they're not bad. It's not fun bedtime reading, but it's On Combat and On Killing by
Fantastic
Colonel
books.
David Grossman.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. In fact, he came when Dave went through Trooper Academy. He actually, Colonel Grossman actually came and spoke.
Oh, wow.
Which is really cool. So basically, Colonel Grossman in both of these books, he talks about the psychology behind. Actually, he even goes into, well, I was gonna say psychology behind like killing in combat. What it takes, like what kind of conditioning it takes for military personnel to get to where they are able to kill.
Yeah.
And yeah, the type of training that the military puts their personnel through to get them to where they have a high probability of killing at the necessary time and place, engaging with the enemy. And he talks about the numbers, from like World War II, which were just insanely low, the actual number of people that were able to kill, versus like during Vietnam, the kill ratio was way higher per person. It's just very, very interesting. So he talks about the psychology of it, and then, which obviously I didn't kill, but it was playing for keeps, if you would, right? I knew that's what I was doing when I did it, because my life was threatened.
And how soon did you know that he had survived?
It was a week.
Okay, so you have that whole time where you can only assume that he probably didn't make it.
Yeah, and I really don't know at that point. I was kind of like, whatever, I don't care. If he did, okay, I don't know what that means. If he didn't, I don't really care. I don't know what that means either.
Because you had crossed that threshold.
Yeah.
Like you had made the
psychologically
decision.
I made the decision to kill him. Right?
Yeah.
I told him. He knew based on what I told him, except maybe it wasn't the first time he'd had a gun pointed at him and told he would be killed. But that's why you don't screw with people you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you don't take violent action against people that you have no idea who they are or what their background is or what they will do. So it was a week before I found out. And it may have been when I got called in by the police station to answer a few more questions for him. So, but I ended up reading both of these books, and he actually even talks about the psychology of like gang violence and gang murder and stuff like that. And that's where what I mentioned about group absolution comes into play, where, several people do the killing or whatever other deed they're partaking in, and one person doesn't feel all the guilt. They can kind of shift blame, and it lightens the load of guilt because it's spread between a group. The group has decided to do this. So anyway, all that to say, he goes into the psychology of this sort of thing, and then how people deal with it. And I can't remember, it's been years since I read both books, but very good reads that I highly recommend, even to people probably in military and law enforcement now who never have had to or not yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I read both of those books before I deployed.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I also highly recommend them. I think anybody in this space, anybody that if you strap on a gun every day and you accept that I have this because I might have to use it, and I might have to use it in the ultimate way. I think it's important to explore the psychology of it.
Yeah.
Because, it's a very real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I look at it is, the Bible tells us that God made the world perfect, and then it fell. Man fell.
Yeah.
Man fell, and the world is now corrupt. I mean, whether you believe that or not, the account, the historical account of the Bible, whether you choose to believe that or not, is up to you. But the fact is we can all agree that it's a corrupt world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not utopia. The government's not going to get us there either, right? Like we're fallen creatures, and so, and then I lost my thought. That's what it was. So, but it was created perfect. And so I think for most people, unless you're a psychopath, you have an aversion to killing, right? Like, it is not in the nature of man. He is not born with this desire to take life, I don't believe. Mm-hmm. Obviously we run around as little kids with plastic guns and play army and shoot each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's at a different level.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think maybe that comes from wanting to be a tough guy and wanting to, protect and be a man and all that kind of stuff. But I think that if there's not conditioning, and if there's not some group absolution, and we've talked about like experiences you guys have had, and maybe different from mine but similar in some ways, and sort of how it was dealt with, right? It's your stories, not mine, right? So don't feel super free to talk about them, but basically I think there's a psychological it affects people psychologically in a pretty big way.
Yeah.
If they have not been conditioned, if they've not trained for it. And then you kind of have to detox afterward. And I would say that you're probably never the same person afterward. And I want to add this in and be careful how I say this, but it would be easier next time. Here's not what I mean. I want to be really, really clear on this. What that doesn't mean is I am quicker to pull the trigger. That is not what it means. What it means is psychologically it wouldn't affect me as much, right? Like, it's more like, this is something I must do, and I am willing to do it if I have to.
Yeah, and you've already developed the recipe in order to deal with it.
And I've already,
as far as like the aftermath, I guess.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because you don't know how your body's going to deal, or your brain's going to deal with it until you've actually gone through it for yourself.
Yeah, you really don't know. And I'll kind of be vague on this too, but there's been situations since then, and here's why I say I know that I'm not going to be quick to pull the triggers. There have been situations since then where I have pulled my gun several different times, but it ended up not being what I thought, right? So it's not that I still have this aversion. I have an aversion to killing, and I have an aversion to wanting to take life, right? That's still there. It hasn't broken down that barrier, but I think kind of what it does do is it maybe does numb you just a little bit. Like, yeah, there's bad people and you must deal with them at times, right? And it doesn't happen to everybody. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it's not an unknown anymore.
It's not an unknown, right?
You've had to pass through that door before.
Right.
And once you do, it's like, you're experienced, like what the line is, and you're absolutely not going to let something happen again. So if you're confronted with that situation or a similar situation again, where that decision has to be made, it's like you have, like Steven said, I like to use the word recipe. Right. You have the recipe to deal with it. And so it's, again, it's not like it's premeditated or anything like that.
No, not at all. Not even almost.
And I would argue, at least from my own like experience and perspective, it's like it almost gives you a higher value of life.
Yeah.
It's like you
does.
realize that, like how fragile it is.
Yeah.
How, I guess how final those decisions are.
Yeah.
And how like once that decision's made, there's not really, you can't rope it back in,
Yeah.
And I think I guess it's like understanding that it's like there's not going to be as much unknown and maybe anxiety is not the right word, but
the stress level might not be quite as high.
Yeah, you have experienced that, so those neurons are connected like that. Those neural pathways are there already from your last experience. So, yes, it would still be, if something were to happen, it's like you're just better. It's like anything, you're just better prepared for it. So
it
doesn't mean that you're
experience.
Yeah, it's like if you've been in a car accident, and you've experienced that whole thing. Yeah, it's like you would just thinking about what would I do if I got in another car accident. It's like you're more prepared. It would be less, in some ways it would be less of an effect, but it's still, you're not trying to get in a car accident, So
you're not looking for one.
So it's
that's right.
But no, I think that's really cool that you brought that up. I think it's important. A lot of people, and I think it's mainly because most people haven't experienced something like that, but they think about what would I do if, what would I do if, what would I do if, and not very many people think about the gravity of the aftermath. You know? So
I want to add too, there's been people, even the surgeon told me, he's like, I hope that like when it's my turn that I'm able to. Yeah. Right. Like I hope. And once again, some things you can only look at through your own experience, right? And it's not conclusive, but maybe you've just learned an aspect of what you need to know based on your experience. But I was pushed. I guess I would say I was pushed to the breaking point. In other words, I was not. I shouldn't say to the breaking point, but I was pushed to where I reacted, and I knew that's what I needed to do. And so I want to give a little bit of a reassurance to people out there. They're like, I don't think I can do it. Okay, maybe there's some people who couldn't. That might be possible. But to me, the way that it happened, I didn't feel like it was a matter of can I or can I not. It was like I have to. There's not another option. And it was like I wouldn't say I was on autopilot, but almost. It was like it's go time. And I knew as soon as the window was punched out, like he had been warned, and the window was punched out, and I just shot him. I mean, it was as simple as that. And so I just kind of want to give people a little bit of reassurance that, I think when it's go time, you will know that it's go time. If you're in tune with yourself enough, you're going to know. Yeah. And, when your level of what's the word? I don't know if anxiety is the word, but basically, you're there. You know you're there, and you will respond. And I mean, there's some people who freeze or whatever, just don't know how to respond. But
and that almost goes back to we talked about I don't remember how long ago the podcast was that we talked about it, but like. We talked about how important it is to train. Yeah. Like if you're gonna be the type of person, I mean, if you're a person that's concealed carrying and carrying every day, you've kind of made that decision that you are willing to do that. And if you haven't made the decision that you are willing to do that, then you probably shouldn't be carrying.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then on top of that, you should be training, with a purpose. Like, hey, I am training. The reason I carry is because I'm going to defend my life or my family's lives or my friends' lives. So at that point, it's like I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we talked about, in the military, every target you shoot at is a person. Like you form that Like that's like almost like a brainwashing for you to
Okay,
be like,
right.
That conditioning you were
It
talking
is.
about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's important to do if you plan to conceal carry. You know, if you're going to the range, that target is not a target at that point. You're defending your life. That target's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And to get that mental shift, I think is important to actually be effective in your training, because you can be the fastest guy to get the gun on target and shoot, but it doesn't matter if you're not able to do that in a real life situation. Like
some people I said, you know, don't worry about whether you think you can or whether you think you can't. There was I went to a firearms class not too long ago, and one of the individuals that went there, I've gotten to know since then, and he actually admitted to me, he's like, I can't do this. Like he's just like, it's not in me. I could never. He said, I realized after doing this class, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, he said he would, I think he would try or whatever, but I think he would try if he needed to.
Right.
But it was like something in his mind told him that he was not going to be able to do it. So he's like, I'm not really going to even train anymore. Like, that's really interesting. And I don't know if it was the type of training we were doing. It was with those 9mm paint rounds that sting pretty good.
Yeah.
And you are shooting each other before, you know, the person can get to you with the knife or whatever, you know, the training knife. But something in him told him he was not going to be able to perform if it came down to reality. And so, yeah, I mean, everybody's different, but for those people that do carry and they think, I hope I can, like, I think I can, I hope that I can. I think for those people, I think you will perform when you need to. I don't think of myself as like a tier above everybody else, or I'm more of a man because I happen to have that experience now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's anything real special, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's another thing I kind of wanted to ask you too, Zeke, was just because not a lot of people get to experience what you experienced.
Sure.
You said that your firearm got seized, and I know there's a ton of misconceptions on like what the process is behind that, but I was curious if you wanted to just kind of talk about like the process behind, I guess, like almost like the legal side of it, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, so they I didn't really have a choice in that.
Yeah.
They, like you say, they seized it, and they told me that they would give it. I think they told me at the time they would give it back. It wasn't my everyday carry.
Yeah, it was kind of perfect for you because it's like, all right,
it was
perfect
perfect
gun to take away from me.
Yeah, because it's not what I carry to defend myself with all the time, really, ever. So they took it for a while as like part of the evidence, right?
Yeah.
And they found my 3 shell casings. Those are in an evidence bag and all this stuff. And yeah, I can't really speak for other law enforcement.
Yeah, it's probably different.
Right? Like it might be different.
Varies.
If you're in New York City, they're probably like, we just got a new GAT, you know. But I have no idea. But they took it for a while as part of the investigation, just like they took my phone and searched my car, and they didn't take anything out of my car. I think they read through a little book that I used. It was, I called it my brain. Like I'd write stuff down in it, like thoughts, you know, that I had and things to remind me and of, you know, stuff I didn't want to forget, and phone numbers and stuff. And they asked me some questions about some stuff I had written in there. And, but yeah, they took the gun for a while, and they said I think they said they would give it back. Anyway, they did end up giving it back. I don't know if they said they would at the time, probably depending on what the outcome of the case was going to be. Right.
Yeah.
But they did return it to me, and I have it. Yeah, They gave me all my evidence bags. I don't have the casings anymore.
How long was that process?
Oh, yeah, good question. So my wife and I got married like 2 weeks later. Flew to the Bahamas. I actually asked them, they're like, you can go home and all this stuff. I'm like, well, we're actually supposed to get married in 2 weeks. Like, can we still do that? They're like, yeah. I mean, yeah. Like, we'll be in touch with you. You know, that was the other thing people griped about. Like, you didn't go to jail. Like,
yeah.
They're just in touch with him. Crazy man on the loose. Yeah, not really. So, and I said,
now he's in the Bahamas.
He's fled the country. Oh man.
Did they care about they didn't care about you going out of country? They were just like,
I asked them, I said, we were going to go to the Bahamas for our honeymoon. Can we do that? And they said, oh, well, you're coming back, right? I'm like, yeah, we're coming back. They're like, okay, yeah, I mean, no problem. Like, you're coming back, whatever.
Did you have to show proof of return tickets and stuff?
No.
No. Right on. They just
they were really easygoing. The one officer knew my brother. He said,
dude, small town vibes, man.
I know.
It's different.
Well, the one thing I really like is that when you're law enforcement in a small town, some people, there's two ways to look at that. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's, you got everybody in your back pocket, or everybody's got you in their back pocket or whatever, because they know you and go to the same church, or, you coach their kids at baseball or whatever the case may be. It's like, they also know who are the troublemakers and who is law abiding and who is not. That's the flip side of that, right?
Yeah.
So, not that the other guy was from this area, but one of them knew my brother, which doesn't mean that I'm a good guy, right? Because they knew my brother. He actually said, it was funny. The investigating officer's like, yeah, I know your brother. I actually just pulled him over for driving his motorcycle too fast in a school zone. I'm like, oh. It was pretty funny, but no. And it was kind of like
troublemakers.
It was kind of a, yeah, he was saying it kind of like he's being a naughty boy, but but it was sort of tongue in cheek too, like kind of a joke, like yeah, I know your brother. I actually just recently pulled him over on his motorcycle. So so we came back, and it was 6 months. It was 6 months later at the so what had changed was we were married. We waited to get pregnant, so we were pregnant by that time, like 5 months pregnant. No, I don't know how long, but we
did the same thing. It was like a month or two in.
Yeah. I always tell people, we waited. So we were pregnant with our first, and I had a job at that time with Coca-Cola as a truck driver for them. I actually just lost my CDL. Lost it. It expired, like my medical card and stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to use that thing probably. I mean, I held on to it for years, and then I ended up just being like, they said it's going to expire. I got to go pay to get my medical card renewed. I don't plan, if my business never went under, whatever, like I wouldn't go drive truck.
Right.
I just am not going to be gone a couple days at a time. Like I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So like whatever. But so I was driving a delivery truck for Coca-Cola, Class B trucks. And I remember I was down by the spit. Was I on the spit or near the spit? And the district attorney called me, and he said, he's like, yeah, so, well, he didn't, however he talked to me. Yeah, dude. So anyway, man, no, he told me that charges against both me and the other guy were dropped. And I was just like, oh, yes, I'm not in trouble. Like I was just relieved. So I've been waiting for 6 months, which is not maybe a super long time. Kyle Rittenhouse was in jail for like 2 years or whatever. I don't know how long it was. It was a long time. I think maybe he got bailed out, but he was under lock and key for a little while.
Yeah.
So obviously the person that I shot didn't die, which probably made a difference as well. and I think Kyle killed 2 or 3 people. But anyway, I think he asked me if I had any questions or whatever, and I didn't. I was just very relieved.
Yeah.
So I went into Sportsman's Warehouse not long after that, and there were guys in there that I knew, and I was talking to them about it, and they're like, one of them said, "He didn't get charged with anything?" I'm like, "No, he didn't." Oh, what? And so there was, you have like 2 years where like he could bring a civil suit against me.
Yeah.
For shooting him, right? Somebody told me, I think it might have even been law enforcement, who said like, yeah, I'm pretty sure the judge would laugh him out of a courtroom if he tried. And, just based on all the evidence.
Yeah.
And then, but anyway, I actually went to the DA's office and I said, so this guy laid hands on me. They chased me down. They're both under the influence, or at least he was, while this happened, and he broke my window out. It's like, why is the state letting him off the hook? Like, why are you guys letting him off the hook? And this is the assistant DA, a woman. And she said, well, sir, you didn't, why didn't you mention this to the DA initially? I'm like, I didn't think of it at the time. I was just relieved that I was not being, like, charges hadn't, because there were recommended charges against me for assault with a deadly weapon or something like that.
Yeah.
It's sort of weird. I mean, based on the evidence and stuff. And her point was just kind of like, well, why didn't you say something sooner? And you should have brought this up sooner. And we figured it was enough. Like, he'd been reprimanded enough by being shot.
Yeah.
I told her, I said, yeah, that's easy for you to say. How would you like it if you had been in my situation? If this had happened to you, you got chased down, your window busted out, like all this stuff. What if this had happened to you? Like, how would you like it? And she didn't have really anything to say. She did not want to talk to me. So whatever.
That's so weird.
Interestingly enough, he survives, right? Did I tell you the rest of what happened?
I think so.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. He's back up north. He flies down from Anchorage with a couple of suitcases. I heard this from local law enforcement, who I saw at like a fundraiser. And he's like, oh, hey, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? I'm like, no. Like, hear any updates? I'm like, no. It's like, oh, well, flew down from Anchorage with a couple of suitcases with drugs and guns. And so the feds were after him. I'm like, oh man, like, he didn't learn. And they chased him to Strawberry Road, and they ditched the vehicle, him and a girl. I don't know if it's the same one or not. And they ran off into the woods and they got away. It was winter. Winters up here are not very nice. So
yeah,
it'd be interesting escaping into the woods. Maybe they just ran off and came back to their car later. I don't know. Anyway, so they escaped and got away. And about a week later, law enforcement was tipped off that he was in Safeway in Kenai, and Kenai cops were like sitting out there and with a Fed, at least one Fed, and the Fed was waiting outside the door, maybe plainclothes or something. And I guess just body slammed him, like literally just body slammed him when he came out and took him down. And the feds were after him because drug trafficking is a federal crime. And so that's why they were after him. And I don't know all the details, but I was told by this officer that he went away for 7 to 10 years in federal prison, either in Washington or Arizona. And 7 years, he's out, unless things got extended, or 10 years, he's maybe got a couple years left.
Interesting.
So, pretty interesting, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't sound like he made much of a second chance.
He didn't.
It's too bad.
I've prayed for him that he would know Jesus.
Yeah.
As a savior. I don't hate the guy.
Yeah.
He better not come visit me. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, just saying,
not gonna
like,
use a 22 this time.
no, he better not come visit me. I have a family to protect, and I will.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I hope when I get to heaven that I see him there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because I hope that his life gets changed. And just like the surgeon, who's a God-fearing man, also told him, like, man, you have another chance at your life.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully he does change. I really do hope that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Man, that's really awesome of you to come on here and share your story and break it all down and talk a little bit about the after effects or the aftermath, I guess. So yeah, I think it's valuable. I think it's important to understand the severity of it. And also, like, the biggest thing I personally took away just listening to your story is, like, there's just no telling how things are going to develop. Like, it sounds like it was just a whirlwind.
It was a goat
just
rope.
in the middle of it, and then before you know it, you're getting,
I don't envy it at all.
Yeah, me either.
Because I've obviously heard the story before from you, but I didn't hear all the part about him, like, grabbing your neck and.
Oh, did I not mention that?
Well, I think you said that he, like, kind of attacked you.
Laid hands on me or something.
Because the last time we talked, I think we were literally standing outside in the
cold,
in the winter, middle of winter. So
yeah,
it was the more abbreviated
it was
version.
The expedited.
Yeah.
And this was it was the first time you had heard it, right, Stephen?
I was there, so I kind of got in on the tail end.
Oh, because you were on the phone or something. He's just such a popular guy.
No, I was talking to one of the other guys.
He was talking with some of the other guys that were
okay.
training with us out there. But
okay,
yeah. No, it was just trying to put myself in your shoes. It was like, man, it sounded like you were trying to evade and people bring it up. That's the other thing. Like, it's so easy to sit here, just for our audience. It's easy to sit here and poke holes in, like, not poke holes in your story, but, like, think like, well, why didn't you do this? Like, you brought up people saying, why didn't you go to the police station? It's like, it's important to know that when you're in a really stressful situation like that, it's hard to make, like, very clear decisions like that. It might seem simple after the fact, but that's
but I don't think that was the best decision.
And
I think what he did was the best decision.
And I think going back to what you said about God gave you what you needed, I think you ending up back in that parking lot, I think, was by design. I think it was like, you may have not intended for it to happen that way, but it did.
A lot more witnesses there.
Yeah, and that's where the cops are already coming.
Yeah,
so it's like
right. Yeah, which I appreciate. Appreciate you mentioned that, Stephen.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Like I hadn't ever thought of that until now. Like, oh yeah, I did tell him. This is where it was at.
I'm on the used car sales. Like, that's
and if you live in this area, you know exactly where that's at.
Yeah,
as soon as
you
you
do.
said that, I was like, I know exactly where that's at.
Yeah, and it was a little past that, but I was still, like, right in the middle of the parking lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to kind of sum it up, I hope kind of what people can take away from it is just kind of the breakneck speed at which things can happen and develop. And I'd like people to remember that it doesn't, and it likely won't, make sense, right? Like, if you have a logical mind or a somewhat logical mind, it's like, okay, here's this scenario. And I've done this since then, but it's like, here's a scenario. If this happens, here's what I'm going to do. And then, like, if this guy comes over and then this goes down, like you play it out in your mind, this logical progression. No, just a guy on drugs thinks you're driving too slow, chases you down, hammers your window out, and you shoot him. Like, well, why did he think you were driving? Dude, it doesn't make sense. Like, so my point is that things can happen at breakneck speed. It doesn't have to make sense. There doesn't have to be a cussing road rage match because you cut somebody off, in the other town. That's not how it happened. and it didn't make sense.
Yeah, and that's why I think too many people get hung up on the what if games, and it's like, well, that's not what we're here to do. You know, like especially in a training situation,
that's right.
People get hooked on the, well, if this was to happen, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. This is what, just, I don't know.
That's why training is so important.
You can't prepare for like specific events. It's just you gotta have the skill set there. That way you can
rely on it.
Be the best prepared that you can be for those situations.
Would you say kind of since we kind of started touching on training, you said you didn't have a lot of training prior to this.
I didn't.
Would you say that this was very much the catalyst to go and get training and kind of pursue some of these other things?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, for sure. I carry pretty religiously now.
Yeah.
Okay, very religiously. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always carrying. Always.
Yeah.
And it was the catalyst for that. I mean, I carried before. I was like, yeah, I carry a gun in case I ever have to use it. And I knew how they functioned, and I had shot them, but it was like, I work on the slope. I'm buying guns. I like guns.
Yeah.
Guns, guns and knives. And so, yeah, it certainly was the catalyst for it. Because I know, everything went as well as it could have, I think, based on the lack of training that I had. But I still want, if it does happen again at a later date, I want it to go better. I want to know. And one thing that I've noticed just through not just that experience, but life experiences, work, all kinds of different things, is what does separate the men from the boys is the training. It is the experience, right? Like I can freehand grind custom knives almost perfect. In other words, I'm not using jigs and stuff. That's not because I'm incredibly gifted. People say, "Oh, you're so gifted." Like, I don't know if it's gifting. I put in thousands of hours doing it. If that's what you mean, you can freehand knives almost perfect too, if you put in a lot of time doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I want to encourage people to do, is to go get training, right? Like, don't wait till it happens to you before you're in a situation, but practice. I was talking to somebody, some neighbors of mine who are an older couple that we just recently met. I just love them. They're just salt of the earth. They're like in their 80s. He just went on a muskox hunt in Greenland, killed 2 muskox. And they've only been married 3 years.
Oh, really?
They're just this older couple. They're just loving life. They're so much fun. I actually bought a fillet knife from me recently too. But they're just really fun people. They come over and they bring her brother and his wife, and we're something about bear spray came up or something like that. And I said, do you have 2 of them? One to train with, one to practice with? And they're like, well, we have like 3 of them. I was like, have you practiced with it? Like, you need to practice. Like, they say, I don't know what the specs on those things are right now, like these days, but like 30 feet away or something like that. I'm like, do you know how far 30 feet is? Like, have you, I've started asking people, like, do you have one canister to just use up in practice? It might sound dumb, but it's like, can you hit a bear-sized target at 30 feet? And do you know what 30 feet is? And you know that if you don't hit them in the face, it's not going to do anything, right? Like you have to practice. It doesn't matter if it's a firearm.
Yeah.
You have to practice with the tools of your trade, or the weapons that you're going to be using to protect yourself. It doesn't really matter what it is, right?
I imagine 30 feet's like without wind or...
Yeah, right. So you have to think about these variables though, right?
Yeah.
And so training tactically with a gun is a pretty serious thing. You have to be able to manipulate your weapon system. You have to be able to get to it quickly without hanging up, hopefully. And then you have to be able to deploy it in the right direction in a certain amount of time and be on target, right? And in the middle of chaos, right? It's not going to be nice. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
And so you have to perform. And the only thing that's going to, I think, I mean, as you guys know, and as you're, saying right now, the only way that you're going to cut down on your error is to train. Like, you have to train.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing your wisdom and your experience. And if you want to hear more of Zeke, he's been on another podcast with us. It's What Makes a Good Knife. So by trade, Zeke Johnston is a bladesmith. Is that the correct terminology?
It is, yeah.
Perfect. So go check out his company if you're interested in custom knives. And we'll link it in the description. So
thank you.
Scroll down there and click on it. And we encourage you to check out the other podcasts too. But it just so happens that he makes, with this incredible experience he's had that, was pretty serious and pretty heavy, but a lot of good stuff to learn from it. He also makes really cool knives. So
thank you.
Definitely go check that out. But again, thank you for coming on, and
you're welcome.
You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much.
You've got the storytelling skill, so it's very fun to listen to. But
thank you very much.
Well, we'll see everybody next time.